Asia. So this is our sixth webinar. TAFSSA is a CGI initiative working across South Asia. This initiative aims to deliver a coordinated program of research and engagement across the food production to consumption continuum to support equitable access to sustainable healthy diets, improve farmers' livelihood and resilience, and conserve land, air, and groundwater resources. So TAFSSA's webinar is focused on all the topics related to food production to consumption and all the value chain and everything. So in this sixth webinar, we will be hearing from Dr. Kaushik Majumdar. He's the DG of African Plant Nutrition Institute, and he will tell us, and he will be speaking about site-specific nutrient management, its evolution and dissemination in South Asia. And I would now like to request Dr. Mahesh to do a introduction about the webinar, and also Dr. Kaushik, because he knows his work very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Majabin. So first, definitely this is my great honor and pleasure to be introduced Dr. Kaushik, a person known as kind of potash person and a nutrient management person. So if I would start from Dr. Kaushik, start from his career. That Kaushik did his master degree from BCKV in soil chemistry and soil science. Then Dr. Kaushik did PhD from again soil mineralogy and then soil chemistry from Reuters from USA. And Dr. Kaushik started his career from I would say Potash Research Institute of India, which is which is based in Delhi, Dr. Sahab, as a soil mineralogist. And then later he shifted as a deputy director in called Potash and Phosphorus Research Institute for the India and Canada joint program. And from there, I know Dr. Kaushik. So because it's long association with Dr. Kaushik, so I'm coming on that part later. But later on, after that, he become as a kind of director of South Asia for called again IPNI, and then he become vice president of Asia and Africa of IPNI. Then he moved to IPNI's close in Asia, and then they moved completely and focus is as called African Plant Nutrition Institute, right? And then he become as a director general of that. Then he got another responsibilities, which I came to know today, that he is also interim for executive director of Global Phosphorus Research Institute, which is in UM6P. Still, Dr. Saab, you are serving that, and that's great. But
no,
okay, but he served that as well, right?
Yeah.
But Dr. Kaushik is also a fellow of Indian Society of Soil Science, and then he's have many awards. That's if I will started to list, it's long. But Dr. Kaushik and CIMMYT is aligned together since from so far I know from 2000 almost like 2005-06 we are working together, and Dr. Kaushik developed very good tool which is called Nutrient Expert. It was jointly earlier was with ERI and then IPNI, but later on it's this tool is released by jointly as CIMMYT and IPNI, and I think everybody used that. And then we had collaboration and some trials in Bangladesh as well with Dr. Kaushik and his team. Other than that, Dr. Kaushik is working for sustainability of potassium, not only in Asia but Africa, especially now they are focusing on that and how they can improve soil health, and then to reduce the mining of soil potassium by heavy feeder crops, and then also that's Dr. And personally, it's great, privilege for me to be see Dr. Kaushik for to this, this webinar. So Dr. Kaushik will talk today about site-specific nutrient management, and everybody knows, and I think it's privilege for everybody else to learn more on site-specific nutrient management. So Dr. Kaushik, thank you very much, and again and not only now, now we are working in Africa with Dr. Kaushik. We are looking forward because CIMMYT is putting presence in Africa, and then we are looking very closely to be work with APN in Africa as well. So we are looking forward to work to him, continuously, and then strengthen our collaboration. So thank you, Dr. Kaushik, for accept our invitation, and floor is yours now. So this will be take like around 35 minutes your presentation, and then we have questions and answer, and then finally again conclusion. So please put your questions while you hear Dr. Kaushik, and ask as much as questions to Dr. Kaushik about nutrient management, and especially for us. So thank you, Dr. Kaushik, for.
Thank you very much, Mahesh, for your kind introduction. It is always a pleasure to work with scientists like you, and I have enjoyed our collaboration with CIMMYT and scientists like you. And by the way, we are working with CIMMYT in Africa now, in one project at least, and I see that there will be opportunities to expand that collaboration in the future. So let me just share my presentation and talk a little bit about site-specific nutrient management. And I'm really thankful to CIMMYT for this opportunity to talk about something which is very close to my heart. And in my previous job with the International Plant Nutrition Institute, I had the privilege of working on site-specific nutrient management with a large number of partners in South Asia. And CIMMYT was indeed one of the biggest partner that I have worked with, and we have done good things together, I would say. Before getting into the subject, I just wanted to say a few words about the African Plant Nutrition Institute. In my previous job, I was with the International Plant Nutrition Institute, and it closed down in 2019. And the African Plant Nutrition Institute evolved out of that, and we started operating from 2019. And now we work in about 15 countries in the continent, with offices in North Africa, East and Southern Africa, and as well as Western Africa. And what we are trying to do here is looking at how best we can utilize nutrient management to improve the resilience within production systems. We are trying to improve soil health and trying to see how soil health can be translated from soils to plants to animals, and eventually for better human health outcome. And also we are looking at how precisely we can use nutrients that improves system productivity and as well as farmer income for improving livelihood. But at the same time, we are very keenly looking at the environmental impact of agricultural nutrient use. And so I'm sure within the audience there will be colleagues who would be interested to join us in our endeavor, and we welcome that. Going back to South Asia, we are talking about a region which is one of the most densely populated part of the world, and naturally the urbanization impacts are very high. And the pressure is very high. and we see a lot of fragmentation of lands, and so the land availability is very low. And if from the air, it looks like a mosaic where you can already see that each of the plots look very different from each other, which you do not see in broad acreage farms. And so the variability is pretty high, and that makes it very interesting, I believe, for agronomists, soil scientists, and people who are trying to manage or help manage these kind of systems, providing knowledge and understanding to manage them better, to produce optimally. These smallholder systems, when we talk about it, each individual piece is managed in a different way. I'll come to that point in a minute, but the difference within plots and between plots are high. There are reasons, long-term reasons, which are the topography, genesis, climate, all these impact the development of land. And these are long-term effects which do not change very quickly. But management, how farmers manage their piece of land, creates quick changes. And these are short-term. And that could be driven by cropping systems, how they establish their crops, how they apply nutrients. And basically it goes back to resource endowment of farmers and how they intend to manage their plots. And so obviously, if as practitioners of agronomy or soil science, we look at it in a way that individual farm fields must be managed differently, and there lies the biggest opportunity of making them more productive. These variations show up very clearly. These are some of the results from the Indo-Gangetic plains that we did with CIMMYT a decade back. And basically, we are looking at the Indo-Gangetic plain from northwestern India down to the lower Gangetic plain of West Bengal, and for wheat. And we ran a series of nutrient omission plots across the transect. And this is how the responses show up. I mean, every single region has their own flavor of responses. And these are average data. Obviously, if you dig deep into each of these bars, you will see a huge difference in terms of how crops responded, how fields responded to nutrient application or non-application. And this is where the management of nutrient comes into play. And what happened is, when you have small plots, you have large number of farmers, different scales of operations, and every individual farmer managing their plots in a different way. As someone who is trying to work with farmers to provide them better guidance, I would say, in terms of how to manage nutrient, it becomes a very complicated job, because you have to come up with solutions for each individual plot. And so generalized nutrient management for large areas seem like an easy way out, because in that case, and that has become the norm, that one size fits all kind of fertilizer recommendations is in vogue in this kind of smallholder systems for a long time. But at the same time, if we could manage spatial and temporal diversity between plots, there are many benefits one can accrue out of these smallholder systems. You can improve productivity that directly relates to access to food. You can improve farm income, which helps improve livelihood. But at the same time, that also helps to maintain soil fertility, improve nutrient use efficiency, and eventually better stewardship of nutrients applied for in agricultural systems. And so you basically tick all the performance indicators, major performance indicators in the economic, social, and environmental aspects. And that is exactly what all of us, I guess, are trying to do. The site-specific nutrient management, it basically talks about addressing nutrient differences that exist within and between fields. In our case, in smallholder systems, we are more concerned with the between field differences, whereas in large acreage systems, high-tech agriculture, even within field differences in nutrient availability is taken care of. And so you apply nutrients to match these locations and differences. But this was in vogue. The term site specific was in vogue for a long time, actually. It's not something new. When the global positioning system and the geographical information systems came into being in the 80s, that led to more opportunities of playing with these variabilities, trying to be more and more precise in terms of how you manage your plots. And when these devices became mobile and they are hooked up with agricultural machineries, further opportunities for managing inputs, particularly nutrient, became a reality. In smallholder systems, till a certain point, I would say that it was entirely relied on direct estimation of indigenous nutrient supply. So all the nutrients are analyzed by soil testing, and then nutrients are supplied based on what the crop would require and for a particular yield target and how much is already there in the soil, and you sort of bridge that gap by applying nutrients from outside. And this has been, I mean, there are thousands of examples. I just wanted to show something which IPNI did in early 2000s with the national system, ICAR. And in different locations in India, the system yield could be increased substantially. I would say that in rice wheat system, if the norm would be between 7 to 10 tons per hectare, but site-specific nutrient management based on soil testing up that to say almost 16 tons, 17 tons of system yield, which is extremely high, I would say, in India, and with associated improvement in profitability and nutrient use efficiencies. But the question then comes to you that, well, how do you adapt this to smallholder systems where you have millions of farmers to deal with? And things have improved. Soil testing labs have increased in numbers. Their capacity increased quite substantially over the years, but still, when you are talking about 15, 20 millions of farmers, it becomes a challenge to provide recommendation to each farmer. One, there is lack of capacity, but at the same time, the turnaround time of soil test results, and then interpreting that to provide science-based recommendation, this becomes a bottleneck for most of the cases, most of the governments, I would say, although there are big efforts now happening in South Asia. So then, in the early 90s, basically, a group of scientists at the International Rice Research Institute, there was Ken Kassman, Achim Doberman, Roland Bures, Christian Wheat, and several others, who started thinking that, well, what is the way of bypassing the soil testing? and still come up with recommendations which are site-specific. And they started relying on nutrient responses. And that's why the name plant-based SSNM came into vogue. What they thought that if there are enough data of crop response from different growing environment, one can find out about the nutrient requirement, or as well as how much nutrient is in the soil, in a sense that the plant basically tells you how much nutrient it's getting in terms of the response they're showing. And so the question that came is, South Asia is diverse, and so how do you really come up with numbers which represent all kinds of geographies? But if you think about it, when a crop is responding to a nutrient, it is taking into account all the growing environment determinants, pH, soil organic matter, climate, variety, everything is basically integrated into the response that is coming out from the plant. And so this group of scientists, they started looking at differences in crop requirement. They started looking at indigenous nutrient supply through plant responses, and then tried to use the nutrient recovery from fertilizer and other sources, including water, manure, etc., etc. And that basically started a school of work, I would say. And IPNI, the International Plant Nutrition Institute, we started using this methodology to come up with site-specific nutrient management strategies. So it basically entailed it is estimating the optimal nutrient requirement, and so the QUEFTS model was used, which was developed by Dr. Bart Hansen at Wageningen, and he first used it for maize in Africa, by the way. And then that was the model that became the centerpiece of this effort, and this helped in determining amounts of nutrients to apply. They then identified target range of agronomic efficiency that we are trying to achieve while growing the crop. Looking at P and K balances so that you don't mine the soil and the fertility levels go down. And finally, develop a fertilizer application strategy, which is basically providing the nutrients to the crop as and when it needs them. So let me just expand this a little bit. I'm not going to go into much deeper into this because the time is limited. But what they did was they set up a large number of trials across Southeast Asia and South Asia, and used those data to come up with what you see in the bottom, the reciprocal internal efficiency of nutrients, of nutrients, which is basically the kilogram of nutrient you would require to produce 1 ton of yield. And so in this case, this is the first one output from them, which came out, and it says that you need about 14.6 kg of nitrogen, about 2.7 kg of phosphorus, and 15.9 kg of K to produce a ton of rice grain. And this is the fundamental piece of that work. And then there is a stepwise process. You need to understand the yield target that is defined by the climate variety, what kind of season you are talking about, as a lot of people would be from South Asia. You know that we have different rice seasons. The yield levels that enable yields are different. And so we tried to look at what is the attainable yield for a particular location when nutrient is not limited. And then remember, we already had those numbers from the QUEFTS, which allowed us to calculate the total amount of nutrients that one would need to produce a certain yield level. And then omission plots, nutrient omission plots allowed to look at the indigenous supply of nutrients in a particular plot. So if you have all the nutrients applied except one, say nitrogen, in that case, you would get a yield without nitrogen application, which is basically utilizing whatever is in the soil. And then the difference of nutrient requirement for your yield target versus what you already have in the soil is the gap you are trying to fill with external application of nutrients. And that's the strategy of site-specific nutrient management that helped help move this concept from a conceptual level to the field level. But then again, it's not an easy process. I mean, if you are talking about millions of farmers, if you are talking about agricultural extension system, which needs to imbibe these knowledge and then apply it in the field, it becomes a real challenge to upscale this kind of knowledge-intensive ideas into the field. And so people started thinking about how to simplify these, and then came the idea of repackaging the principles of site-specific nutrient management into a form that would allow others to do it without thinking too much, without doing too many calculations and so on and so forth. And then different groups started working on developing algorithms, models, and they replaced actual processes with critical assumptions, and then turning all these models into decision support tools, which could be used easily and help advisors or farmers to apply nutrients on the basis of SSNM principles. So I'll talk about the tool nutrient expert that Dr. Gathala was talking at the beginning, that IPNI and CIMIT jointly developed for South Asia. So it basically utilized site and farming information from farmers and extension workers. And then the decision support tool used different decision rules, algorithms, to provide fertilizer recommendation. And in the background, large databases from multiple locations and diverse conditions were built in for the decision support tool to query information from there and come up with recommendations that didn't really need soil testing. We worked with we worked with a large set of partners. It included, I'm just showing here the Indian partners, but the similar things happen in Nepal, in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka. And we worked with the national system, we worked with the universities, we worked with the government systems, as well as private companies who were interested to upscale better nutrient management. And so a solid period was spent on gathering data, omission plots, etc., from different parts of the subcontinent, and then working with all these partners to come up with decision rules and algorithms that fits the scientific rigor, because we wanted that the scientific rigor of this model has to be sufficiently high to provide a recommendation that can ensure that once applied, it will provide results which meets the key performance indicators. And so by 2013, the nutrient expert for hybrid maize and wheat was developed. As you can see that it was released Tom Lumpkin was the DG of CIMIT at that point of time. Bruno Gerard was the Sustainable Intensification Program Director, and there are people from the national system as well as higher officials from International Plant Nutrition Institute. And it went through the development process, validation process, and during the validation process, we obviously saw many changes that needs to be done within the model because it was not perfect, and we were not trying to develop a perfect model, which I doubt ever exists. One, we just wanted to be 70-80% sure that what is the output coming out of these models can improve over the existing practices. And so it was tested across. These are the results from India for wheat, maize, and rice, and we did improve significantly yield levels. We in most of the cases we could reduce phosphorus and nitrogen levels. Not in all cases, obviously. Potassium is not used adequately in South Asia, so most of the cases we saw that the tool is recommending high levels of potassium based on the QEFs and so on and so forth. And it did increase the fertilizer cost, but the gross profit also substantially increased. And if you can see that I have made a note that current situation, farmers' yield is less than attainable yield. The reason why it is there are geographies where we work, for example, in China, where farmers are at the attainable yield level. So the nutrient expert was developed in China also. We couldn't improve the yield very much beyond what farmers were getting. But what we could do is we could reduce the fertilizer rates substantially, and applying the 4R principles of applying it at the right time and at the right place, we did improve the nutrient use efficiency, and the cost was reduced for fertilizer, and naturally the gross profit increased, and there was a very significant improvement in nutrient use efficiency, which is one of the biggest challenge, I guess, we are facing all across the world, that nutrient use efficiencies of agricultural production systems needs to be increased so that we do not disturb the planetary health beyond what we have already done. Then CIMIT ran an extensive study across the Indo-Gangetic plains, where there were like about 1,600 paired trials and estimates for productivity, for revenue, greenhouse gas emissions, and the potential of global warming potential was calculated. This was published in 2021, which basically solidly established that the principles of SSNM transformed into a tool called Nutrient Expert provided adequate guidance in terms of nutrient management that improved the current yields and income of farmers, but at the same time was quite successful in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emission. And that's something all of us are trying to do at this point, to hit these KPIs adequately in different production systems. Then one of the key things that came into our discussion was the farm typology. So far, we have been thinking farmers as monolithic groups, but in smallholder systems, obviously, farmers manage it in very different ways. They have different resource endowments, and their decision for nutrient management is not driven entirely by science. I mean, there are a lot of socioeconomic determinants, that influence them, whether they are producing it for their home or for market, the influence of peers, how they perceive a threat of nutrient deficiency, what is the risk perception in terms of whether there will be flood or drought, and so on and so forth, subsidy, access to market, everything comes into play. And that basically drives a lot of their decisions in terms of nutrient management. And so then CIMIT and IPNI at that point of time, we started working on looking at how best we can produce farm typologies and then provide them recommendation based on the typology to be more precise. And at the same time, another thinking was going on that I'm not going to be able to provide nutrient expert recommendation to each and every farmer. So if I could group them group them based on certain scientific principles, and typology is a very well developed stream of work. It started in Africa, and now a lot of people are working in that line, understanding that that's a very good way of going forward in terms of scaling. First of all, understanding the diversity and then providing guidance. Excuse me, not only for nutrient but other inputs. And so we worked on Eastern India, and these are results from Eastern India, where we divided farmers into 6 typologies based on their different aspects, both biophysical as well as socioeconomic. And what we could do, as you see, that the blue bars are for nutrient expert based recommendation, and the green ones are for what the farmers are doing. And so obviously we improved yield substantially for each of these typologies, but at the same time we could do it without changing much of their cost of fertilizer, simply because of the fact that it's trying to balance. So you are not applying a particular nutrient in a large quantity, say nitrogen, rather distributing your cost to get nutrients which create a balanced application for a particular yield target, and then you are applying nutrients at the right time, so these are the small tweaks that we could do through the nutrient expert tool to come up with improved productivity and profitability without stressing their pockets. And that's probably another issue that we always have to keep in mind while working in smaller systems, that socioeconomic endowment plays a large role, and we have to fit recommendations and frankly, at this point of time at African Plant Nutrition Institute, we are going away from coming with recommendations. We are rather working more with farmers to develop solutions for them which fits their biophysical and socioeconomic, and providing a sort of box of solutions for them to pick up. And so that is probably how the future extension would go in terms of providing guidance farmers. This is a summary slide from different parts of the subcontinent. We looked at different, and these are partners of IPNI, and CIMIT is a partner of most of these works. And we looked at most of the studies, obviously, improved productivity. The vacant boxes doesn't mean that those improvements were not done. It's just that these studies did not look at those parameters. So we could increase productivity, profitability, reduce greenhouse gas emission, global warming potential was reduced, nutrient use efficiency was increased. And in one of those studies where scientists looked at carbon sequestration, nutrient expert-based recommendation improved carbon sequestration during the period of study, which are outcomes that we are more and more looking into, because of carbon is becoming a revenue stream because of the green carbon market, but at the same time, resilience of systems are so dependent on carbon sequestration that if you could improve carbon sequestration, there are possibilities that you could impart resilience to climate change and other shocks that farmers almost regularly face. Finally, this is my last slide, I wanted to end with something I read recently. This is a paper which came out in 2022. And remember one thing, that we are very focused on the quantity of nutrient. Site-specific nutrient management or any other nutrient management, the first thing that we think about is the quantity of nutrient rather than anything else. And this study, which is an extensive study, we're using data from different parts of the continent of Africa, is saying that obtaining significant benefits from site-specific nutrient adjustments, which is the quantity the researcher is talking about, could be very challenging. And the expected gain might come more from other parts of agronomic management, including when you apply the nutrient. And so if quantity is the most important thing, the author gives his opinion that you have to have far more data than what we currently use to make those small changes which are specific for each farm. And that may not come out to be the return on investment might not be enough. So it's not the nutrient quantity only, it's how you apply them, how you are doing all the other agronomic management, and those everything combines together to give the benefit of applying nutrient management in a very strategic way. So let's keep those in mind. Let's also keep it in mind that we have been talking about scaling of nutrient management strategies, scaling of recommendations, but I don't think we have really accomplished that because of the large number of farmers. But at the same time, the mechanism of scaling is certainly improving in terms of reaching farmers, but we are not there yet, and a lot of work needs to be done to basically reach millions of smallholder farmers so that they can improve their productivity, improve their income, to improve their livelihood, and contribute effectively to environmental sustainability. And that I think a lot of work needs to be done there. So thank you very much for the time, and I hope I provided a glimpse of the site-specific nutrient management. I'm sure that you will be able to find a lot of interesting literature that can provide far more in-depth understanding of the site-specific nutrient management principles and how they are practiced across the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And now there are number of questions in chat and question answer. So if I would like to go one by one, then so first question came from Saiful Islam, and he's saying that what is the status of nutrient expert for cereal crops in Bangladesh? And Saiful is your student, so.
Yeah, Saiful, thank you very much for your question. I hope you are doing well. It has, as Mahesh was saying, that nutrient IPNI folded down in 2019, and it stayed there the nutrient experts stayed there in the no man's land for a while, and so nobody was working on it. But what I can see that I mean, every year I see publications coming out from South Asia, from Africa, wherever nutrient expert was developed. So we have now taken over the nutrient expert, and we are hoping that we will start working on them. And the first intention is that to make it freely available, the algorithms and everything, so that people can work on it, change them according to their requirements, and not being a custodian of the algorithms and decisions rules, but putting it in open space so that everybody can work on it. So
Thank you. I think we will look forward to, we have to start again this
yeah,
legacy, and then do more user friendly and come up that. Second question is from Harun, and I didn't get that, but I want to read it. In 2018, Pupils Development Institute has been providing fertilizer and seed to marginal farmers in collaboration with International Rice Institute. So there is a more demand at this stage for this. If more farmers can be brought under it, the poor farmer would benefit. Definitely, if we have nutrient expert and they have crop manager, right?
yes,
If and both are same and more, same background and come with same. So yes, definitely it will help to the poor farmers to reduce the overall and improve the efficiency of fertilizer in somehow. Yes, that should be underbrought more and more. But Dr. Kaushik, I think that's the meaning, and I think that's enough to be answered to Dr. Harun, if it's quite.
I agree.
Second question is quite interesting, which is from Osmane Senago. And question is that there is another model which does not use algorithms, to my knowledge. This is smart. This is soil sampling mapping and recommendations transfer to farmers. Model developed by IFDC. I would like to know more about the APNI model. I think that's through presentation gone, but Dr. Kaushik, yes, this is an interesting question.
Yeah, I would ask you to do a Google search in terms of nutrient expert. Um, uh, the algorithms were published in the Computers and Electronics in Agriculture journal, and then there are a series of papers that came out of South Asia, from Africa, from China, from Southeast Asia, and that will provide you a very clear background about the nutrient expert model. It's as I said, that still people are working on it, using the models and publishing results on different crops, particularly rice, wheat, and maize. There was a model developed for cassava in Africa that also were published in very high rated peer reviewed articles, journals. So you do a Google search, I would suggest, and then you will find all this resource material to provide you a clear understanding.
And this is in algorithm allowed little bit, on the basis of uptake, but also allowed some extent to on the basis of how much inputs is applied and organic carbons and all. So it allows from soil kind of mining, but also considered as more on uptake basis. So that's kind of overall concept of nutrient expert. So do you have any plan to create app for Windows and cell phones to make the model user friendly? And in multiple languages and farmers in different areas. How might awareness raising initiative help to reinforce the approach of making farmer nutrient management decisions? That's from Dr. Harun.
Yeah. In case of nutrient expert, the apps, Android apps for cell phones and tablets were already created
Great. Yeah.
by mid 2010, and so those were already developed because we clearly realized that it has to be more accessible, and everybody do not have access to a computer. So there are different platforms suitable. Apps were created for different platforms, and those were available. In terms of awareness raising, that's a very crucial point you raised, because that's something everybody has to work on, because uh, it not only affects in terms of nutrient management, it not only affects the farmer's investment in terms of productivity and income, uh, but also on a broader picture, if millions of farmers are not doing nutrient management adequately or properly, that has a much larger impact on the environment, and we are seeing it everywhere in the world in terms of um, pollutions, as well as when farmers are not getting adequate yield, particularly in Africa. Uh, Vulnerable ecosystems like forests are being cut down, and so the small advices have much larger impact in the global health, I would say.
Okay, so there are several questions around balanced fertilizer, that Bangladesh fertility and productivity is decreasing and organic carbon is low. So, and there are questions around that also, that balance, when farmers use balanced fertilizer, it's increased productivity, reduce soil fertility. I don't know how it's supposed to, because if you use in balance, I don't think so it reduce. But these are the questions, Dr. Kaushik, around like uh, how balanced fertilizer and how we can make this nutrient expert and apps to improve the soil health, particularly in Bangladesh, and in particularly how we can make more collaborations through that to address this issue.
Yeah, actually, balanced fertilization. One of the I don't know much whether you just said something about it, but often what we one of the missing links in this balanced fertilization ideally should not be causing fertility to decline.
Yep.
But what we, in terms of being more precise, what we do is apply nutrients which does not really look into the mining aspects. And sometimes when we see that there are adequate nutrients, so there is a final issue of looking at soil mining, and that was incorporated in the nutrient expert, where even if you do not have a phosphorus or a potassium requirement, we still added a maintenance dose, so that you do not mine soils of their nutrients, because eventually, if you keep on doing that, there'll be a time when you will deplete soil nutrient contents, and so that's one of the points that we need to take into account, that there is a limit as to how much you can do the mining, and beyond that you have to provide nutrients to keep the levels high. Mm, and awareness, it's not only community engagement. I think scientists, decision makers, everybody has to be part of that process.
Good. There are questions. Maybe I will take 2 more questions and then we'll reply on emails if there are more. But again, this question came from Dr. Mohammed Chatoki, and he's saying, thanks for your presentation and nice talk. But question is that, do you think that precision agriculture practices can contribute to improve crop yields and profitability in countries like Asia and Africa? Since some precision agriculture cost most of farmers, means is more expensive, probably that's his meaning. If you can also give us your point of view about the main constants intervening the adoption of SNM and SSNM in such countries. It's a good question. Yeah, hope you get my point on that.
Yeah, it's actually we have been dealing with this issue for a while. That how do you define precision nutrient management? And often that perception is there that precision management of nutrients will always require high-tech machineries and so on and so forth. But in case of Asia and Africa, if you think about it, I mean, minor tweaks in terms of quantity of nutrients, in terms of when a farmer applies the nutrient, at what crop stage, etc., are precision. It doesn't need high-tech interventions, which is unlikely in case of Asian African smallholder systems. We started the African conference on precision agriculture in 2020, and next year will be the third version of it. And the precise reason for organizing that event every 2 years under the aegis of International Society of Precision Ag is to bring out these knowledge, which is practical and applicable in the African context. And similar things are happening in other parts. I mean, there are Asian conferences of precision ag where people are looking at things that could be done without even the intervention of high-tech machineries. And so, yes, I certainly believe that precision management of nutrients and other inputs can bring benefit, but it's a matter of how you define precision.
Okay, good. Thank you. I will ask one more question, which looks interesting. So that questions came from Sri Prasad Vista Ji. And question is that if socioeconomic and biophysical determinants are considered, the recommendation for each nutrient will definitely vary. Is it feasible for site-specific domain to have different nutrient or fertilizer recommendations? That's the purpose, but I would like to hear from Dr. Kaushik.
Yeah, actually, Dr. Vista, I know that you have been working on nutrient expert and you have been a partner with several of our colleagues. So that's a very good question. As I was saying, that we are getting to a point where we have developed nutrient expert. We can provide recommendations on a very precise manner to a particular farmer. But suppose I'm working with a fertilizer industry and they want to provide recommendation to a particular domain. I do not expect that the fertilizer industry personnel will go out to every farmer and sit down with the nutrient expert tool and come up with the recommendations. That's ideal, but that's not feasible. And so domain-based recommendations, we think would be the best way to go forward, because if you can carefully select a domain where farmers are growing the similar kind of crops, have almost similar kind of soils and doing practices which are similar, you can come up with a recommendation which is not field specific but domain specific. You can still benefit a lot of farmers out of those recommendations, and that's more practical, I would say.
Yeah, and that's the kind of like this nutrient expert and all. I think when we'll put it, yes, we can give to be field to field and social, but depends on how it's kind of like accepted and adopted kind of things is that's a social behavior and we need to be understand as well. But thank you for asking. I think Majumdar, we can take one or two online question. It's feasible or not?
Dr. S.M. Mofizul has raised his hand for quite a long time, so let him ask.
Yeah, only one or two because we are running behind
Yeah,
time.
sure.
And
Yeah, I have a meeting coming up, so I would like to
yeah, I understand.
use
So yes.
myself as soon as possible, please. So please go ahead.
So Mofizul ji, yes, please unmute yourself and ask.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Thank you for your nice presentation and useful information. I am Dr. S.M. Mofizul Islam, Senior Soil Scientist, Bangladesh Rice Research Institute.
Hello.
So I am working on greenhouse gas emission from rice field since 2012. I have a very simple question. You have presented the different nutrient management, site-specific nutrient management, and different cropping systems. Would you please share me which cropping system is more suitable to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions and which nutrient management is most useful to increase use efficiency and also mitigate the greenhouse gas emissions? Thank you.
Well, Professor,
Mofizul.
the aim should be to reduce greenhouse gas emission in any and every production system. Because if we think that this production system is suitable and this is not suitable, then we are in trouble. And if nutrient management is the main driver of greenhouse gas emission, then I would say that site-specific nutrient management strategies works best. And that is how you need to be more and more precise in terms of allocating nutrient for different production systems. And so site-specific, farm-specific, location-specific, whatever you call it, you have to be precise in terms of estimating how much of nutrient to apply and when to apply. And that's the way to go forward. And that's the strategy. But I wouldn't confine myself to a particular production system that here I would try for greenhouse gas emission reduction, and this one I would not. There would be strategies, there would be difference in strategies in terms of tackling different production systems, but I'm certain that there are strategies for each and every production system that I would try to reduce greenhouse gas emission.
So thank you to everybody, and then it was really highly appreciated. Everybody, that's about kind of like 60 participants were attended, which is quite good number, and it was from different across, not only it was from Nepal, India, Bangladesh, and then across other countries as well. So thank you to everybody to join this and then part of this presentation. I would like to thanks Dr. Kaushik again. Nice to see him, but thanks for accepting an invitation and giving these presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mahesh, and thanks to CIMMYT and thanks to the CIMMYT team for this opportunity, and thanks to all the participants who asked very pertinent questions.
Thank you. And today Tim was also joining another colleagues, but Tim got some reason that he got some cervical pain, so he's suffering. He cannot join. So he was make also
give my best wishes to him.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye. Anything? Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will come with the next session of the webinar. It is a regular webinar of TAFSSA. So you will get the recording of today's session soon after the event. And yeah, thank you so much for joining.
And Dr. Saab, people are asking for presentations, so hope you can share it, right?
Yeah, it's with you. Majumdar has
Yeah,
it,
I have
so
it.
Okay,
feel free to share.
Thank you for giving. Thank you very much for offering. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye bye now.
Bye bye.